For 20 million years, something ruled the ocean that makes the great white shark look like a minnow, an apex predator so powerful that its bite force exceeded that of any animal in Earth's history, delivering roughly 10 times the crushing power of a Tyrannosaurus rex. This warm-blooded hunter grew to 80 feet, stalked whales through ancient seas, and then, around 3.6 million years ago, vanished completely from the fossil record. Teeth were all that remained, massive, serrated blades scattered across the seafloor, with some measuring nearly 8 inches long. For centuries, people found them and wondered what kind of creature could have produced such weapons. And they called it Megalodon. Almost everything you think you know about this animal turns out to be wrong. Hollywood sells a version of Megalodon that functions as a biological missile with fins, an aggressive and frenzied killing machine lurking in deep ocean trenches and capable of biting ships in half. Films like The Meg transformed this ancient shark into shorthand for ultimate aquatic nightmare. But the scientific reality proves stranger, and in many ways more fascinating than any movie. What actually swam through those prehistoric waters wasn't a mindless predator at all. A warm-blooded and strategically hunting apex predator with enormous energy demands, protective of its young in coastal nurseries, and ultimately unable to adapt when the world changed around it. That's the real Megalodon. The answer to whether this creature lived up to its ferocious reputation lies not in movie theaters, but in the fossil record, and in a century-long scientific mystery about what kind of animal this actually was. Scientists got Megalodon's identity completely wrong for over 100 years, and the confusion makes sense when you examine the evidence they had to work with. A Megalodon tooth, triangular and serrated and designed for cutting through flesh, looks remarkably like a scaled-up great white shark. Tooth with the same basic shape and the same function. Museum reconstructions depicted Megalodon as a supersized great white. Scientists classified it in the same genus, and for generations this stood as accepted truth. One problem undermined all of it. None of that was true. Belgian paleontologist Edgard Cassier challenged the assumption in 1960, which marked the first cracks in the accepted theory. Real evidence accumulated slowly as researchers examined Megalodon teeth more closely and noticed that the serrations appeared finer and more regular than great white teeth. The crowns measured thicker, and most tellingly, Megalodon teeth possessed a chevron-shaped dental band called a borlet that great whites completely lack. The discovery that finally settled the debate arrived in 2012 when researchers found fossil jaws of a proto-white shark containing teeth that resembled mako shark teeth rather than Megalodon. Great white sharks hadn't descended from Megalodon at all, but came from an entirely different lineage, and the two families had actually diverged over 100 million years ago. Similar teeth represented convergent evolution, two unrelated lineages independently arriving at similar solutions to the same problem, which meant Megalodon wasn't a giant great white, but something else entirely. That raised an obvious question. If Megalodon wasn't related to great whites, what did it actually look like? Scientists wrestled with this problem for decades because sharks are cartilaginous fish with skeletons made of cartilage rather than bone, and cartilage doesn't fossilize well. Teeth dominate the fossil record since sharks shed roughly 20,000 over a lifetime, and researchers also have some vertebrae calcified enough to survive. Reconstructing an entire animal from just teeth and vertebrae resembles trying to determine the size of a house from a few bricks, leaving enormous room for error. Megalodon size estimates read like a cautionary tale about scientific overconfidence. Bashford Dean constructed a jaw reconstruction in 1909, suggesting Megalodon reached 30 meters, nearly 100 feet, and later analysis revised this downward by 70% because Dean had simply made the jaw too big. Consensus settled around 15 to 18 meters for decades, based on scaling up from great white proportions, but if Megalodon wasn't a giant great white, those proportions meant nothing. The breakthrough arrived in 2024 when a Megalodon vertebral column specimen in Brussels, 11 meters of vertebrae representing the most complete example we have, revealed a fatal flaw in previous calculations. That column represents only the trunk section, not the head and not the tail, just the torso. Earlier estimates using great white proportions had calculated the entire shark at only 9.2 meters, which meant the trunk alone measured longer than the whole animal was supposed to be. Professor Kenshu Shimada and 2018. International experts published the solution in March 2025, reconsidering everything about Megalodon's body plan. If the vertebral column stretched that long relative to total body length, Megalodon must have been proportionally more elongated than a great white, slenderer, more like an enormous lemon shark than a scaled-up white. New estimates suggest Megalodon reached approximately 80 feet at maximum, 24.3 meters, with weight estimates standing at roughly 94 metric tons. Dr. Stephen Godfrey's reaction captured the scientific community's surprise when he admitted that the argument is a good one. But still, wow, that's twice the size. Consider Megalodon's bite to understand the animal's true power. Researchers at the University of New South Wales CT scanned a great white skull in 2008, mapped the muscle attachments and jaw mechanics, then scaled the results to Megalodon's body mass. Conservative estimates placed the bite force at 108,514 newtons, over 24,000 pounds, of force, while maximum estimates reached 182,201 newtons, between 10 and 18 tons of crushing pressure. Dr. Hans-Dieter Suess of the Smithsonian put it plainly, "There is nothing today that comes anywhere close. Even Tyrannosaurus rex doesn't come close to that amount of pressure." Megalodon's jaws could span approximately 3 meters, wide enough to accommodate a small car. But here's the thing, Megalodon didn't use that bite the way great whites do. Modern great whites typically target the soft underbelly of prey, while Megalodon did something different. Fossil evidence reveals its thick, robust teeth adapted for biting through tough bone to reach the heart and lungs directly through the ribcage. Researchers at Calvert Cliffs in Maryland found whale vertebrae with compression fractures consistent with high-speed ramming from below, and a megalodon tooth with a broken tip nearby showed damage from the same impact that shattered the whale's spine. A sperm whale tooth at the Aurora Phosphate Mine in North Carolina bears 3 distinctive gouge marks where Megalodon bit through the jawbone hard enough to leave permanent impressions. The Smithsonian Institution holds a whale rib with 3 calluses from healed bite marks, which means that whales survived a Megalodon attack. Some prey escaped, but not many. Researchers finally answered a question that had lingered for decades in 2023, whether this shark ran warm-blooded. Dr. Michael Griffiths' team used clumped isotope thermometry on fossil teeth from North Carolina and Japan and determined that Megalodon maintained a body temperature of approximately 27 degrees Celsius, about 7 degrees warmer than the surrounding seawater. Warm-bloodedness explains nearly everything about Megalodon because warm muscles deliver more power, allowing a warm-blooded shark to pursue and overpower prey that cold-blooded predators couldn't match. Venturing into cooler waters became possible, and hunting other warm-blooded animals, the marine mammals that formed its diet, could happen on equal thermal footing. Warm-bloodedness comes with a cost, though, and that cost was constant hunger. Between 98,000 and 100,000 kilocalories per day, roughly 50 times what a human needs, that's what Megalodon required. Food intake translated to between 1,500 and 3,000 pounds daily, and stomach capacity has been estimated at 10,000 liters, roughly the volume of a small swimming pool. Cold-blooded sharks can slow their metabolism during lean times, but Megalodon couldn't simply wait out periods when prey grew scarce, because the furnace had to keep burning, or the animal's temperature would drop, its muscles would become sluggish, and vulnerability would follow. And that leads to the most counterintuitive fact about the ocean's greatest predator. Megalodon actually cruised as a slow swimmer. Analysis of its placoid scales, the tiny structures covering shark skin, revealed they lacked the closely spaced keels found in fast swimmers like makos. Cruising speed estimates land between 2.1 and 3.5 kilometers per hour, slower than a human walking pace, which meant Megalodon wasn't a pursuit predator, but an ambush hunter. Cruising slowly to conserve energy, then striking from below with brief, devastating bursts of acceleration, that was the strategy. Fossil evidence of whale vertebrae shattered by high-speed impacts from beneath confirms this hunting approach, revealing something far more sophisticated than the mindless killing machine of Hollywood, and far more vulnerable than anyone imagined. Megalodon dominated warm, shallow seas across every continent except Antarctica at its peak, with fossils found from Maryland to Peru and from Florida to Japan. 20 million years of success made it the most dominant large predator the ocean had ever produced. And then the world changed. Climate cooling arrived first, beginning in the late Miocene when global temperatures started a long decline. Polar ice expanded, and ocean temperatures dropped, particularly in mid-latitude regions that had been warm enough for Megalodon. Shrinking islands of warm water trapped the shark in refugia, where temperatures remained suitable, but prey grew increasingly scarce. Baleen whales that formed Megalodon's core diet possessed options the shark didn't, because they could migrate to colder and more productive polar waters, and increasingly, they did exactly that. Survivors evolved faster swimming that made them harder to catch, while some grew larger and became harder targets even for Megalodon. Competition arrived next when a 2022 study revealed something surprising. Megalodon and great white sharks occupied the same trophic level during the early Pliocene, hunting the same prey. Great whites are smaller, more agile, and less metabolically demanding, able to survive on less food, reproduce faster, and tolerate cooler waters. Killing megalodons wasn't necessary, just outcompeting them. Loss of nursery. Habitats delivered the final blow when sea levels dropped by up to 200 meters in some regions. Shallow coastal waters where Megalodon raised its young simply disappeared, and by 3.6 million years ago, the greatest shark that ever lived was gone. What happened next reveals just how dominant Megalodon had been. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist on Earth, evolved to their current sizes only after Megalodon disappeared, because with no apex predator capable of hunting adult large whales, selective pressure against gigantism vanished. No whale exceeded perhaps 50 feet during Megalodon's reign. But within a few million years of its extinction, whales became genuine giants, with blue whales stretching over 100 feet. Every whale swimming today carries evidence of Megalodon's absence in its body. Giants exist because the giant killer doesn't. By any reasonable definition, Megalodon qualified as a formidable predator with the most powerful bite ever calculated. 20 million years of ocean dominance and the ability to hunt whales by crushing through their rib cages. Ferocious implies mindless aggression, though, and evidence points towards something more interesting. A warm-blooded and strategically hunting apex predator that understood energy economics, conserving fuel when not hunting, and striking with overwhelming force when opportunities arose. Vulnerabilities the movies ignore plagued the real Megalodon. Enormous metabolism demanded constant fuel. Slow reproduction prevented populations from recovering quickly after decline, and dependence on warm, shallow seas left the species exposed when those conditions changed. Megalodon's greatest strength, the warm-blooded physiology that enabled its dominance, became its fatal vulnerability when climate cooled. 1/3 of modern shark species now face extinction threats from climate change, overfishing, and habitat loss. Pressure's not so different from what ended Megalodon's reign, though now, caused by human activity rather than natural cycles. Ken Shimada drew the lesson when he noted that even though Otodus Megalodon possessed traits like warm-bloodedness that allowed it to be adaptable, it was not immune to the effects of climate change, highlighting the importance of conservation efforts to protect present-day sharks. Faster than when Megalodon fell, the ocean is changing again. Somewhere in that vast blue expanse, descendants of the creatures that outcompeted the greatest shark of all time still swim, carrying in their bodies the memory of an ancient rivalry they won. Teeth and vertebrae scattered across the seafloor, stones from a time when something truly extraordinary ruled the deep. That's all Megalodon left behind. The ocean remembers its greatest predators, but it remembers them only in stone.